Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And, Bill, last time we talked about the 17-year-old from Illinois who went to Kenosha, Wisconsin with a AR-15 style assault rifle and ended up, trying to align up with the police and provide some law and order that he felt he needed to provide, and ends up killing a few people and wounding others. And that was shocking. And we talked a bit about that, but there's a bigger issue here that I think is very important to go over. And that is, you and I have been talking about it, preparing for this episode. And really that's about citizen engagement. And
yes.
When should citizens engage? How much is too much engagement? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, this is toughy because when that young man, meeting his own need for identity or contribution or service or love for his country, notice I just started with his needs, and immediately it's gonna work on the listener immediately. Anybody that's listening to his show, he's going like, how did you jump to compassion for that guy? Especially because he just took two people's lives and significantly changed the landscape and the environment of that city, as well as his own family and his own experience of being a double murderer, two homicides. It's like his life is, when prosecuted and put in jail, is one of, wait a minute, I was following contribution. I was providing service to my nation. I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do as a young man. I'm ready to fight for this country. And now all of a sudden he's in jail. It's going like, wait a minute, I'm missing a piece of information. And that's a part of, what the things that a 17-year-old needs to learn without getting into this level of violence and death. Now, there's going to be a lot of sadness, loss, and mourning for the people that lost their loved one and got severely hurt and even traumatized in the surroundings about this young man doing that. But we've got to do a better job of society and community to go like, wait a minute, you're in Illinois, they're up there, that's their community. They've got to fix and heal their community. You don't got to come up there and help them protect themselves. That's their job. And just think, this is a 17-year-old that would want to enroll into the military, the 17-year-old that wants to fight for the country, yet he's doing it in a way that's not in alignment with service to the country, and regrettably, those lines have been blurred, like you mentioned. This one's a really hard one.
It is really hard. I mean, it again, brings up the question of what laws apply, who do they apply to, and how did he see that maybe he was applying the law, that he was playing the role of police, or assisting the police, providing backup, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's pretty scary. I mean, this also brings into question, the right to bear arms. I mean, so many people, there's the Second Amendment. We have the right to bear arms, and we have the right to protect ourselves and protect our fellow citizen and all that. Well, that may be, but at the expense of what? I mean, here he got into altercations, disagreements, to put it mildly, with others and fired on them and took their lives. But it wasn't his charge to, how do you say, discharge law and order. Was it?
No, it's not his charge. He didn't take an oath to that. He didn't follow the social norms of going through police training, going through military training, in order to things. He's just working on his own independent decision making, in order to, enact what he thinks independently that he's fighting for. There's this tension between, are we going to reestablish our communities in a healthy way, or are we going to keep going down this path of being individuals, everyone's out for themselves, and I'm going to be competitive and I am going to get whatever I can from another person. And if they do something that is outside of something I would like them to do, well, they're wrong, and I still get to have that, my say is the one that works, because I'm autonomous of this.
There's so many ways that this situation is, and this is not going to be elegantly stated, but there's so many ways that this situation is really messed up. Okay. I mean, first of all, to put it very plainly, right? I mean,
it's the safest way to talk about it. This is really messed up. The layers here are really a lot of layers, societal layers, family layers. There's people are saying mom needs to be arrested, assistant to murder. She's an accomplice.
Well, think about it. I mean,
drive them there. She knew.
If you're gonna be in charge of law and order, you're gonna actually try and seek justice according to the law. Here's just a few of the many things that are mixed up in this. This boy, Kyle Rittenhouse is his name. He's 17 years old. Guess what? 17-year-olds are not allowed to have a license to possess a firearm on their own. Now, it doesn't mean they're not allowed to fire them in certain situations at a range with a parent and all that sort of thing, but it has to be, with a parent and in a very controlled situation. Clearly, this kid, he took a firearm that was not his, even if he knew how to use it. He crossed state lines from Illinois into Wisconsin. There's a complication that has legal ramifications. Right. He then committed murder, no matter how you sort of slice it or try to empathize with any of what he did. He committed murder with it. And then he crossed state lines again, going back into Illinois. That has other consequences. And yes, because he's a minor, the parents are liable, even though they had nothing to do with, as I understand it, nothing to do with encouraging him to go and participate in this thing in Wisconsin. They do have a legal responsibility and may very well be brought up on charges themselves. So, and then that doesn't even begin to compare to the lives that were lost. The terrible tragedy of the lives that were lost. And so that's why I say this is just messed up every which way you can look. There's probably a few more ways I'm not even thinking about right now.
I appreciate this conversation, because you're talking about what responsibility and how we have the ability to respond to this. And if a parent takes a kid to a shooting range, we're having some general sense of trust and some looking to have the parent to have a very protective integrated conversation with the kid to say, listen, you're firing this gun. There's a level of responsibility here that goes with that, and a level to society that goes with this. This gun is to be shot in these two different situations only. But that conversation was not in alignment with parents. And I'm flashing to all the different Facebook pictures of him and standing next to his mom and being dressed up in a uniform and very proud. Well, that's an identity he is identifying with. He is a part of that identity of doing that. And that identity is like, there's not like a bad part of that identity, but there can be definitely a dark side to that identity, is that, hey, I'm the law enforcement person. I can't do anything wrong. And all these other people are bad, and I need to police them and corral them and, even harm them if they don't do what I tell them to do. Now, even as I say that, you're going to get upset and unsettled, because that's going to trigger into several times you and I have talked about, well, don't some police do that same thing? And they kind of do, some do, and we don't, and have not measured or haven't really taken charge to measure our morality and our ethics fully in certain police departments in certain states. I mean, you and I were talking about ahead of time about the article about, how white supremacists and militias have infiltrated the U.S. police departments. Now, it doesn't mean that's a sweeping global thing. It just means that that's a portion of truth that hasn't been discussed. It's the portion of truth that sort of maybe needs to be discussed and expanded to say, is there a morality in this piece? Are there really clean guide rails put up in order to balance protection of police lives, for sure, but also how are they acting towards the people in their charge? How are they engaged in that process? And those needs are really important for us to discuss. It's like, you got to get some balance in here. So,
okay.
Anyways, I know I said a lot, but you can see what your body's been doing. I get upset just talking about it, because that's the right feeling.
I do too. And, I think about, I'm actually, as you were talking about some of that, I was thinking about some common friends you and I have who are ex-military, married couple, former U.S. counterintelligence officials, and we don't have to name them here, but they have a 10 or 11-year-old daughter, and I know, and I have seen the photos and Facebook posts where the father, at least, maybe both of them, but what I remember is the father taking the daughter to a gun range and teaching this 10-year-old, how to shoot. But I also know they're very responsible parents, and they are teaching gun responsibility and safety, and what is not only legal, but what is moral and proper. And that, some people might say, well, a 10-year-old should never be shooting a gun. I don't know if I agree with that. I think I've shot a gun from the time I was 10 years old, but it was, again, on a range in a very controlled environment, and we're being taught responsible gun use. And then, of course, hunting and other things that also took place in my youth. But there's a big difference between that and, an AR-15 style assault rifle, and somebody taking that onto the streets by themselves in a very high tension situation. I mean, not a lot of good is probably going to come from that. Our mutual friends are such the most delightful, spiritual, engaged, balanced people I know on the planet. I mean, they're good friends to both of us, and they have a sense and a clarity of balance, as military folks to engage
to know where the lines are and their ethics, morals, and stability pieces are in place. And I don't have any problem with it at all. I'm like, there's no energy around it at all.
Correct.
And because their need for freedom and choice in regards to, how their kid is like, outstanding, and the ability to really create that next level of accountability and check in to see the level of accountability that's needed and necessary in our society, to check in. If we don't know, what winds up happening is our own biases jump into the field and say, wait a minute, a 10-year-old using a gun? Well, that might not be a fit for you, but for them, they have a foundation to place their kid on. They have some strength and ability to stay in that space. But what we don't have, and the thing that makes this discussion really vibrant, is, are we as individuals going to start looking to the community, city, state, nation as the larger outreach of ourselves? Or are we going to continue to talk about being divided and individuals that can't get along? Are we going to keep doing gosh, I guess individuals aren't going to get along, right? Is that the message that you'd like to convey, that, individuals are not getting along? And are you going to convey an escalated message? Most individuals don't get along? Because that statement is not true. It's that because most individuals do get along. How do we know this to be true? They're driving on the freeway together. They get along because they're not running into each other and popping off. All of the drivers, Tom, aren't great drivers, but we tend to get along. So if we're doing a push, then it's 10% of drivers are awful, maybe 5%, maybe 15% if you want to do a larger push. But the evidence is that there's car wrecks every once in a while when moments of awareness drops. And our bias has to be ready and focused on the small thing to put it in proportion, because if we did that well, then our bias would stay in check, and it would say, wait a minute, there is a civilian carrying a weapon that can kill people, and they're not in uniform. Do you see how easy that sits?
Yeah.
Now, can you see how the bias is now going to come in place? If that individual, that young man, is walking in and standing next to police officers and none of them are saying anything, what bias is in place? I don't know. I would guess about 7.
There's a lot. I mean, and so now you're getting toward the big issue that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about. I don't know, maybe you have. I don't know if you've probably read some different things I have, Bill. What if Kyle Rittenhouse, as an individual, decided to take his AR-15, drive 20 miles across the state line to try to support, in his mind probably, order on the streets, right, and prevent things getting out of control? What if he was African American? What happens then? I mean, talk about biases. I think that there's a reality here that there's a whole different kind of reaction and result would have occurred.
The retaliation is the first thing that comes into my mind from a place of bias. He needs to be punished severely now in front of everybody if he happened to be African American. In fact, some people would even go, and his family needs to be punished the same way. Now, we can pull the quote of the president literally saying that sentence. I know how to get rid of terrorists. You take out them and take out their entire family. Okay, well, let's apply that in this situation. You see how the bias door doesn't fully swing the other way. Notice how unsettling it gets to say, no. That narrative only works to a person that has a different color skin. That narrative doesn't work if a person's white. I don't know. Why not? Why doesn't that narrative swing both ways? And that's the bias we need to take. I'm not asking for the bias to work regarding the need for fairness. I am asking for equanimity on both sides in regards to the position of color. But we have a long way to go to exercise that bias.
We do, I believe, have a long way to go. And I think this is why this year in 2020, there has been so much outrage. There has been so many protests in support of all of the African-American, well, as for all the, I guess I would say, notable African-Americans who have made the national news, beginning with George Floyd for, being, I don't even know how to properly state this, but, being treated, I think we can all admit, or I hope we can, very differently by our police forces than the same type of a criminal or suspected criminal, white person would have been treated. And I all you have to do to realize that we have a huge problem with this in America is to really study the prison populations and how many more African Americans are in prison for crimes like this than, other ethnicities, certainly, white or Caucasian people.
Longer time, bigger sentences, harsher punishments. The bias that sits here is very unsettling.
It's very unsettling, and no question, there is a big component of why more of that community is in prison and getting harsher sentences, probably because of also the economic disparity that exists in America, where they cannot afford private attorneys as much as they get public defenders. So there are lots of things that play into it, but there's definitely a race bias issue at the front end of this. And I'm not trying to say all cops are racist. That is not at all what I'm stating here. I don't believe that, but there certainly is. We certainly have some bias problems, and they are being presented to us on a daily basis, largely because of the invention of the smartphone and every smartphone having a video camera on it. Right?
That's right.
I think this has always been here. We just didn't see it as much, right?
We just didn't see it as much. It's been here in all these different levels, and there was a time, you could say, when Johnson was doing all the civil rights stuff and making everything and changing everything around there, over in the 60s, there was somewhat or a larger consensus of, this is the right thing to do it. I'm glad that we're able to do it now, because all of that stuff was in the wake, of JFK's assassination. I mean, he took the public sentiment and just like, oh yeah, I have the public with me. Yeah, why don't I just fix this primary piece and get the voting stuff in place and get these things, because who's going to give a pushback right now? They're grieving the loss of a president right now. The public is on my side, and saying, hey, we're a better American than this, and we need to be a better America than this, and that was a big part of it. So, with all that stuff said, many people are very hard and fast in the way their thoughts and their mindset approaches race and color, because they have evidences and they've been fed messages to reinforce those evidences about others, about the person of color or a person of different sexuality. They've been forced and force fed. It's not like Hollywood hasn't been complicit on this one. Is that, oh yeah, I can write the villain. Here's the villain, and then it's like any mug shot that you would see over the last 30 years. It's like so that's very, very hard and very unsettling, because there's no discussion of moral ethics in that. It's how big is the body count in a movie, and this is the evil person, or this is what the good person's doing to fight back the forces of evil. And that bias and that belief is very real for people, and they see it as something that is alive in their world, and they reinforce it. And this is where it gets very unsettling, So it really, really is. So we are into a little bit of trouble with truth and citizen engagement, because Tom, you and I both want to protect our families, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Need for safety, need for protection. We want to meet that need of ours, as other families do. Both of us have a need for fairness. We'd like fairness to take place with our family, the way we're treated, and we'd like other people to be fair to each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, mutual respect might be a nice thing. I mutually respect you, you mutually respect me, and we extend that to all the people in our view as well as our listener. The listener might not like the things that we say because they're, the way they've been brought up and how they've seen the world, is not really been fully a fit. So, so this whole thing is very, very, very unsettling, very challenging for us as human beings, because we got to bring a lot of compassion and understanding to where the person is with their belief structure in order to do something. Well, we just got to start imagining something new. So, and engage the world in a way that's going to, and our society in a way that's going to be more collaborative, and hopefully not at the expense of life, the way it's been going. So the question, Tom, for you I have, and we can kind of see if we can stick the landing here, is where does the outrage end? What needs to take place from it moved from outrage, furious, I'll walk my hand down, outrage, furious, angry, aggravated, irritated, annoyed, frustrated. It's got to walk itself back down. So there's got to be a movement from the outrage, because the outrage is being stoked. The outrage, even false outrage, is being stoked.
That it's true. There's a lot of outrage being stoked, and it's not all the primary level of outrage from the incident.
Right.
There's secondary and tertiary levels here.
Great catch. Absolutely.
And because, when you see what the president is doing, talking about this, he's trying to say, if you elect Biden, you're going to have more lawless streets. You're not going to have law and order. You're going to, everything's going to descend into chaos. Look at what's happening on the streets. The irony of that is everything happening right now, and all of the videos and images being used and examples of this being used are actually a result of Trump's America, not Biden's America, because Trump is the president and he is the leader right now. So, I mean, there's so many levels in which it's being used, and I have concerns that this is not going to be easily walked down those levels you were talking about.
Right. And the ability to get people to actually take the time to do it, and let it stick. It's got to stick.
It's got to stick. And we don't have a leader right now who's interested in doing that. That's I think the biggest problem, because this needs to come from the top leadership of the country and or of the state, or from police, from, I don't know. I mean, there's so many different levels from which it could come. And, so far what we see happening is Kyle Rittenhouse has been arrested. His parents might be charged. He's being extradited, in the process of being extradited from Illinois to Wisconsin. And this is really, not going to make anybody feel good, even though maybe justice is being done, because some people are feeling that, well, justice is being applied unfairly to this boy for one reason or another. Then the people are going to think justice is being applied unfairly to the parents. Then there's, gun rights issues. There's, of course, the families of the people whose lives were lost or wounded. And, there's not going to be fairness there.
Justice and fairness.
It's just trying to get some resolution, not even restoration here, but some resolution to this that people view as equitable, as proper, as fair. I mean, there's so much emotion wrapped all around this. I don't think there's any way you're going to please everybody and bring them together on this. Not easily, that's for sure.
There is a way out. I think that there is a way out of this to get this to the spot it needs to be, to get the level of mourning and healing that's necessary. And this is not to minimize what's happening on the people that have lost somebody, but there's got to be a way for justice and accountability to move forward. There's got to be a measure of justice and accountability that's at the level of which this person did something, at the level. And there's definitely, more to come about how to get to a place where we as a society could start caring more about community. And when we're angry about something or we're frustrated, that we're working through the right channels in order to get those emotions out and or move those things forward in the world that's more healing and healthy, and then that could really, really make a big, big difference. So
got to get to the point where peaceful protests can happen without violence taking place.
And if violence does take place, the appropriate response is in alignment with that action, and what's burned in my head is the one guy was about ready to loot a store. Another protester stood in front of this one gal, this little wafy little gal is standing in front of this huge guy that wants to break into the store. And the guy keeps pushing her away, but she keeps coming back around and standing there in front until finally he gets tired. He goes to the next door. He starts walking down the street. He starts reconsidering, going like, yeah, I can't get in this store because I got to go through one of my people to get there. And that's the level of accountability that we need to do as a community and a society. Okay?
I like that. That sounds good, Bill.
Yeah, well, there's more to come. I have some really good articles about community and individualism that I think that we can get into, about how truth can move back towards the center where it needs to. We're not interested in taking individual rights away, but what we're interested in is like, how does the community / society / nation work together to heal itself? I mean, we got to do something about that. So
yes, we do. All right, Bill. Well, that sounds good. Right, thanks so much for your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for hosting. Appreciate it.
Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.